Here are my 9 personal finance tips that absolutely transformed my life. In the last 5 years, they've allowed me to 6x my income, quit my job, and grow a 6-figure investment portfolio. So be sure to follow along because I'm confident that all of these tips, if you follow them, will transform your life too. Tip number 1, at a minimum, get rich slow. Have you ever heard anybody say that life goes slowly? I don't know about you, but I certainly haven't. Ask your parents or your grandparents and they'll tell you exactly that they feel like life has just passed them by and they don't know where the years have gone. Man, I'm only 29 and I don't know where the last 10 years went. So at a minimum, get rich slow because life goes fast. Tip number 2, optimize your disposable time. You've all probably heard of the term disposable income before. Essentially, it's the money that's left over after all of your immediate expenses are met. And of course, what you do with that disposable income is extremely important for your financial future. And disposable time follows the exact same concept. We all have 24 hours in a day. We sleep for 8 hours, work for another 8 hours, commute for 2 hours, and then we have another 6 hours left over to shower, eat, walk the dog, watch Netflix, and whatever else you get up to. But what you do with those disposable hours is absolutely critical to your future financial success. For the past 10 years, I've always made it a thing to make sure I'm optimizing the disposable time that I have, whether that's first thing in the morning or even late into the evenings, ensuring that I'm working on something that's going to benefit me at some point in the future. In my life, those things have ranged from e-commerce to Instagram theme pages and more recently YouTube. And from applying myself during that period of time, it allowed me to make multiple 6 figures a year, quit my job, and more importantly, do something that I'm actually passionate about day in, day out. So be sure to optimize the disposable hours that you have, and you may very well find yourself in a similar position. Tip number 3, avoid low profit activities. How much do you value your time at? £15 an hour, £25 an hour, £50 an hour, perhaps even £250 an hour. Whatever it is, be sure to park that number to one side for 1 second. I now want you to think about all of the non-work related tasks that you get up to that end up filling up your disposable time. Things like doing the food shop, cleaning the cars, mowing the lawn, perhaps even cleaning the house. And then I want you to apply a pound value on all of those activities based on how long they take to complete. Let's say you're doing really well for yourself and your hourly rate is 50 quid an hour. So for example, doing the food shop takes an hour, so that's 50 quid. Washing the car is 1.5 hours, so £75. Mowing the lawn, 45 minutes, so £37.50. And cleaning the house for 2 hours is 100 quid. That's how much it indirectly costs you to dedicate your time to those tasks that you have to do. But if you truly value your time, whenever there is a task that can be done from somebody else at a lower cost than you currently value your time at, that you should outsource that task all day long. Time, of course, is finite. We all struggle to find more time in the day. So be sure to steer away from those low profit activities so you can spend more of your time doing high profit activities that are only ever going to increase your personal value. It's certainly something that I need to get a little bit better at myself, and certainly something I need to do a little bit more of to ensure that I stop saving money to spend time and start spending money to save time instead. Which leads me on to talk about today's video sponsor, which is HelloFresh. Now, if you're anything like me and have a super hectic life and work schedule, then HelloFresh is a super convenient way to get your weekly food shop delivered straight to your door. With over 100 different recipes to choose from, you'll spend far less time thinking about what you want to eat for dinner each week and trying to carve out time in your already busy week to go and do the food shop. Because as I've explained, time is money. And there's nothing that I hate more than going to a busy supermarket first thing on a Saturday morning. Now, I recently whipped up this fried chicken and bacon burger and it was absolutely 10 out of 10. HelloFresh will send you all of the ingredients and a list of instructions to follow, so you can't exactly go wrong. You can get all of those recipes for as little as £3.15 per serving, which certainly isn't too bad at all. But what's even better is HelloFresh have given me a sign-up offer for all of you guys watching this video, where you can get up to 60% off your first order, along with free desserts for life. It kind of makes it a no-brainer from a cost perspective. All you need to do is simply click on this QR code or enter the promo code Mitch60 upon checkout in order to apply the discounts. I'll also leave a link to all of this down in the description below. Thanks again to HelloFresh for sponsoring this segment of the video. Now, the first 3 tips were all about your time, because time is our most scarce resource, so make sure you use it wisely. But the next 3 are perhaps even more important than the last. Let's now dive into tip number 4, which is treat saving like an expense. Follow this payday routine, which allowed me to easily build up a 12-month emergency fund. It's a simple process of just paying yourself first. You do this by categorizing your saving as an expense, and that money must leave your account the second that your wage or salary goes into it. Ideally, you'll end up taking 10% of your income, but of course, the more the better, and put that into some kind of high yield savings account. For me personally, I currently use Trading 212's Cash ISA, paying 5.2%, but I also use Chase Bank 2, which are also paying 5.1% for my kind of savings needs. Now, there's a concept here that I wanted to introduce to you guys. It's very much a concept used in banking called a net interest margin. It's how banks essentially measure their individual profitability based on how much they're paying out in interest to people who deposit funds versus how much they're getting back in interest from money that they've borrowed out to customers. And I think it's a concept that people should apply to their own lives too. Right now, there's over £400 billion in the UK sat in low interest rate bank accounts. So it's clear that not many people are really actively looking after their own personal net interest margin, because the reality is there's a huge chunk of cash not in high yield savings accounts. Yet no doubt those same individuals still have some kind of financial obligations in the form of mortgage and the interest rates applied to those, car loans and the interest rates applied to those, student loans and the interest rates applied to those, and the list goes on. So start trying to think about how you can offset some of those interest rates that you pay in liabilities on interest that you can obtain from savings in a bank account. But remember, this money is not for spending, so move it into a separate bank account where regular outgoings don't go out of. Tip number 5, take advantage of an employee pension. 2 in 5 Brits, or about 40%, are not on track for basic retirement. This is the equivalent to 1.2 million people who are likely not to be able to afford what's considered to be the minimum lifestyle requirements, which is considered here in the UK to be the equivalent income of £14,400 per year. This minimum requirement assumes that people can afford one UK holiday for a year for 1 week, and it also assumes that you can spend £50 a week on groceries if you're single, or £95 a week if you're in a couple. And it assumes that you also don't have a car. So it's pretty bare bones in terms of those minimum requirements. But the number of people falling short of those requirements is growing at an alarming rate based on recent reports from Scottish widows. So it probably comes as no surprise that I'm saying make sure that you firstly have an employee pension of some sort, and if you already do, and if you're already paying into one, then make sure that you're trying to maximize the contributions that you're making to it. After all, any contributions made are taken pre-tax, so it's certainly tax efficient to do so. I have a mate of mine who was telling me that he's just kind of crept into that 40% income tax threshold, which is above £50,270 as at recording. And instead of paying 40 pence on every pound in earnings that he generated over that £50,270, instead he just decided to chuck all of that extra surplus money, if you like, into his pension instead. So instead of paying tax, he's actually contributing to his pension instead, which is probably a far wiser choice to make. And the reason why it's super important to do this is because from reports from the think tank, and I'm pretty sure I've also seen this from the IMF, who have come out and recently said that state pension here in the UK is becoming fiscally unsustainable by as soon as 2040. So we certainly shouldn't be relying on the government to pay us into retirement during our golden years. So we must take control of it ourselves. Tip number 6 is to increase your investments proportionately. When I was in my corporate job, and I'm sure the same is for you guys, you get a pay rise every year. Usually it's at least an inflationary one of something like 3%. But I also got promoted a couple of times too, which kind of give me a little bit more of a jump in my salary. There's 2 ways that extra money can be treated. Either 1, you've got a little bit extra money to spend, or 2, you've got a little bit extra money to invest. And in my opinion, you should always be choosing the latter. If you get a 3% pay rise, then proportionately increase your contributions to your stocks and shares ISA that year by 3% too. If you get a promotion and say get a 20% pay rise, then again, take that same approach and increase your contributions to a stocks and shares ISA by 20% that year as well. Forget about lifestyle inflation and apply something called investment inflation, where every time you make more money, you proportionately increase the amount that goes into your investment portfolio. To put this into numbers, if you did this at say just 3% per year, the difference in value in your investment portfolio investing £250 a month at a 7% rate of return over 30 years would be an additional £111,804. All that for simply just increasing your investment contributions in line with your increased salary. You'll be no worse off in your bank account from a percentage basis, but you'll be a hell of a lot better off when it comes to a net worth basis. That was future planning and financial security, so now let's dive into the final theme. Tip number 7 is the law of exchange. This is a little bit more of an esoteric principle about money, but stick with me because it's one that I certainly feel plays a role if you're thinking about it in the right way. The law of exchange suggests that giving and receiving are two sides of the same coin. The more money that you give, the more money that you get back, and here's why. There is something called the velocity of money. Essentially, it's how quickly money changes hands in an economy. Now, if you're spending that money in the right places, i.e. investing in yourself, reinvesting back into your business, and paying people in fair exchange, then the higher the chances are that that money will come back to you in some way. I'd love to be able to figure out what the return on investment are of some of these books that I read up on my shelf, but without doubt, it's the single greatest return on investment that I've ever had that's absolutely transformed my life. So don't be worried about spending money in order to be able to receive money. Just make sure that you're spending that money in the right places. Tip number 8 is the £50,000 millionaire. We all know somebody like it, but don't be that person. The 50k millionaire is somebody who earns £50,000 a year but spends it like they're a multi-millionaire. Fancy new cars, bottles in clubs, designer clothes, all just to put it out on Instagram. Dave Ramsey likes to say, stop buying stuff that you can't afford with money you don't have to impress people that you don't even like. It's a concept called acting your wage, because after all, the fundamental principles of personal finance is that it's not about how much money you make, it's about how much money you keep. You can certainly build self-confidence without having to buy the latest BMW. You can certainly buy expensive stuff, but just once you've generated the income from your investments to justify it. You can also massively reduce your stress just by making sure that you've got an emergency fund in place. So stop living so much for today and avoid the £50,000 millionaire lifestyle, because your future self will certainly thank you for it. Tip number 9 is to enjoy life. When it's all said and done, make sure that you enjoy your life too. We only get one go around in this life, so don't be too frugal that all of the fun gets stripped out of it. I'm certainly not saying that you can't enjoy your money until you've got millions of pounds stashed away in savings and investments. Because the reality is, if you ground yourself in good, sound, solid personal finance principles, you'll be able to enjoy the nicer things in life without having to stressing too much about how much it costs and whether you can actually afford it. But you have to follow these kinds of personal finance principles first in order to be able to put yourself in that position. It's a case of being able to spend but just not overspending. It's the mindset that I have, and it's the thing that's allowed me to become massively financially secure but also enjoy life along the way as well. But I am intrigued. I want to know what your best personal finance tips are down in the comment section below. And if you do want a little bit more insight into my own personal finances, well, I recently made an investment portfolio update which you can check out in this video next. And with that being said, see you over in the next one.